Welcome to the Neuromasters Podcast, the place to reinvent yourself, master your mind, and change your life. Internationally recognized speaker, coach, and trainer Reg Malhotra will teach you tools to improve your mindset, change your behaviors, and let your relationships thrive. Are you ready to unlock the power of your mind? Here's your host, Reg.
Welcome back. Today I want to ask you, have you already decided who you are? Have you already concluded as to what your attributes are? Are you one of those people who will say to themselves and to others, well, this is who I am, or this is me, or this is not me. That's not what I do. Well, if that's you, listen up closely to this episode. I want to explore this a lot further today. Because what I've found after working with people from all parts of the world and with all different backgrounds is that this one common thing amongst many is a strong source of conflict, suffering, and all sorts of other problems that come along when we are closed or when we behave like a closed system. You see, when we say, I am this, we are automatically implying I am not the other side. And although that may be useful at times, as a general idea, being binary, being one way or the other way, can be very restrictive and can be very limiting. And I remember when I first realized this, it was a huge awakening for me. This idea that just because I'm extroverted doesn't necessarily mean that I cannot be introverted. Just because I like to do certain activities should not mean that I don't like to do the opposite kind of activities. Whether you do them or not is kind of irrelevant. What's more important is, are you open to it? What is the thinking system behind you adopting or finalizing your position or your identity? See, I believe that anything you are, anything you can conceive you are, and you would have heard that in other episodes, anything you can conceive you are, you're more than that. You're not your body. You're not your mind. You're not who others say who you are. You're not actually any of that. And even if you were that, you may be that only momentarily or for a period of time or in the context of something specific. So who you are is always expanding and it's always more than what you define yourself to be. Now that's a very powerful thought system to have with you, because that allows you to be flexible, that allows you to be more, that allows you to do more, be more, give more, have more, create more, even share more. Because you're not confined and restricted by a label. Now, labels are a whole different story. I'm going to talk about that in a second. But see, labels themselves come with defined boundaries. And labels is probably the source of our very limited experience of life. Because when we say we are this or I am this, it automatically brings a huge number of beliefs, ideas, and parameters around that particular label. So if I said I am a marketer, then I automatically, not just for myself, but even what people expect of me, instantly changes when I use that label. Just like if I said I'm a lawyer, or if I said I'm a police officer, or I'm a speaker. Now, some of the things that come along with these labels can be beneficial, yes. But if we define ourselves by that, we are kind of cutting ourselves short of many other possibilities. You see, we don't look at a hand and say, I am hand. We say, I have a hand. And the hand has a function. Just like when you say, I am a lawyer, I am a doctor, that is a function. You are not the function. So labels is an interesting part of this discussion today, because the moment we start to say we are something, two things could be happening. We're rejecting the other side. And two, we could be assuming the parameters of that label. So let's go back to the topic that I started with, which is, are you binary or are you non binary? I know for me, this has been a source of huge help and expansion, because I used to think of myself as an extrovert. It wasn't until there were certain projects that I did in my life that required me to self reflect, to examine, self reflect, and to have some time on my own. And I realized that, oh, I can be introverted when the time calls for it. What other areas are there where you say you're one side, but you're not accepting that you can be the other side, or you're not at least forming the belief that you can be the other side? That can be very useful for you, because I can tell you that if you are in, for example, if you're in business, yes, you may need to be extroverted, but most certainly you will also need time for introversion. You will need time to be alone, to self-reflect, to think, and all of that requires you to separate yourself from people. Similarly, if you say that I am not a people person, well, wouldn't it be better to say I normally lean towards, not spending a lot of time with people, or my best doesn't always shine through when I'm with people, or I may not have the necessary skill set to deal with people of all types. However, I can be that, and I can learn that skill set, or I can develop that ability. Linguistically, you're massively expanding your options by not labeling yourself, or by not putting yourself in a box. You see, a lot of things are designed to put us in a box. A lot of personality assessments, a lot of evaluation, self-evaluating things that exist. They will give us a label. They'll tell us this is who we are. Well, and that may be largely true, that we have characteristics and qualities of that type. However, what I'm arguing today is that there is something very special that can happen when you say, well, I'm leaning towards this. However, I am also can be that. Think about it. How many areas in your life you may have restricted yourself just by saying you are this, right? Anything that you can conceive you are, you're more than that. And the practical application of that is watching what you say about yourself, watching how you define yourself. Is that putting you in a box? Is that giving you boundaries? I'd go to the extent of saying when people define themselves by their nationality. Now, I can understand there can be some very powerful benefits to that. However, the moment you define yourself only by where you come from, you're limiting your options, you're limiting your behaviors, you're limiting your possibilities, because a nationality may come with a particular set of ideas around what it means to be from that nationality. And you inherently assume, one can inherently, I should say, assume many of those parameters, in some cases limitations. Now, how's that for an example? Let's look at some other examples. When you say, if you were to say, I am a healer, could you be restricted? Could you be bringing in certain qualities, rather than saying, well, I am someone who has many interests and many skill sets, and one of them is helping people heal. That keeps you open to being other things as well. Because I can tell you, even if you are in the healing business, and if you're running that business yourself, you're going to need to be a business person. Alongside that, you possibly will need to be a salesperson and a marketer. And in current days, a content creator. So we got to be open, we got to be flexible. The point of this topic today is, how can you be more open? How can you be broader than the boundaries you put on yourself? How can you be more than anything that you say that you are? Because you are that. You're ever expanding. Think about who you used to be many, many years ago. I'm sure you've got different thinking structures, greater skill sets. There would be so much more to you. The things you are important to you now, they would be different to the things that used to be important. The way you spend your time and your money and your efforts may be entirely different. How would that be possible if you remained who you were then or who you defined yourself as? So, very important topic, this, because the more we can look at all of the things we define ourselves, I'll encourage you to do that. Take a notebook and write down all of the things that you have either publicly or privately defined yourself to be. Write all of them down, top to bottom. You start with all sorts of things like I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm an employee, I'm a business owner, I'm a whatever skill set you have, or I'm a lawyer, or I'm a people person, or I'm not a technology person, or all these things that we continually say to ourselves. And a lot of these parameters we have for ourselves, a lot of these boundaries, a lot of these labels, they do have their origin somewhere in some event in our life where we could have formed a decision. If you listen to some of my earlier episodes, I talk about this concept of limiting decision and how these decisions are made at the time of significant emotional events or events that we felt a certain emotion. They could be a direct link to the boundaries and the labels we put on ourselves to that. So, really important exercise to do. Identify everything you have defined yourself as. Write down all of these labels, even nationality, any other very generic labels that you put on yourself, and have a look. Once you've written them down, am I more than that? Am I just that? Or can I be more than that? If you're an introvert, write down whether you can also be extrovert, and many times you'll find you can be. But just by reinforcing that you're an introvert all the time, you may be rejecting that other side of you. I mean, this is very, very powerful, very powerful to contemplate, to then internalize, and then to exercise in your life. I hope you can truly understand the enormity of what I'm saying, because a lot of our life's experiences are a result of our ideas of ourselves. Now, some of these ideas may come from other people to us. However, they're still ideas that we may have accepted. I've said this before, the human being is an open system. We're an open system. We're not like a cow. Now, a cow has certain functions, but other than that, there is not a lot available to a cow because of the kind of mind that is accessible to the cow as opposed to the human being. We are an open system. So we can at any time change. That in itself lends itself to us being more open-minded and being open to different possibilities. And how can we be open to many possibilities? I know I've changed my life in many, many ways, many, many times. One, by accessing really, really powerful skills to do these exact things, to change things, to change the way things are inside of my nervous system, my ideas. And so that I continually remain open to new ideas, new possibilities, new experiences, new things. This is what we all deeply want. We want to be more. We want to give more. We want to create more. We want to experience more. And that is truly limited. So think about in your life, where have you, on this notebook that we just spoke about earlier, you should also write down, when you've written down all your labels, do write down, has that label served you and where has it limited you? Even if it has served you, where could it have possibly limited you? Become aware of this, become conscious. The more you become conscious, the more you open yourself up to greater possibilities, greater experiences. Ultimately, I think a well-lived life is a life that is full of diverse, wide, and rich experiences. And a lot of those experiences, for a lot of people, get limited by definitions, by boundaries, by parameters, and by labels. I hope you truly enjoyed it, and I'll go ahead and do that exercise. and become the person who is not just binary, who's not just this or that, but who is this predominantly, potentially, but can also be this. Practice that. Anytime you hear yourself saying something about yourself, add to that. Stand for and. See, stand for and. Anything you say, you can say, and I also do that, and I also can be that, and I am also that. This will give you a beautiful opportunity to have a beautiful life. Thank you.
Thank you for tuning in today. Are you ready to take the next step and find out what's keeping you from reaching your goals and creating the life you want? Go to go.neuromastersacademy.com/gs-lp for a free transformational mini workshop with Reg. See you next week.